name is Kelly, and I work at the Muncie Public Library, and today we're going to be reading the first chapter of Beware the Wild by Natalie C. Parker. It's no secret, ours is the meanest swamp in Louisiana. Regular swamps are dangerous enough, loud, stinking things. They hide their claws in the mud between the crepused knees, beneath the surface of stale, brackish waters. There are 100 ways to die, all cloaked in the twist of pale trees, gators fast enough to catch a grown man, mosquitoes teeming with disease, stinging plants, hungry black bears, and nasty cottonmouths, all filled with spite and patience. Heat so dense it collects in your ears, and air so thick it coats the inside of your nose, and plenty of putrid, sucking mud that'll pull you down and fill your lungs with slow death. But what's in ours is worse. Ours is a creature all on its own. We don't stare into its depths, and we don't ever go inside. We live alongside it, tolerate it, the way every southern town tolerates creeping vines, and I've done my best to avoid it until today. It's 1,000,000 degrees, and I'm baking my butt on the cherry red hood of Finn's old Chevrolet. He's been fixing it up, and he'd get after me if he saw I was sitting on it. But I like the way the seat sears my thighs. Only 1 week to go in my sophomore year. I should have been blowing off studying for finals because I was too busy painting my nails or spending a lazy afternoon at the racetrack. But everything changed a few hours ago, and I'm blowing off studying for a totally legitimate reason, hoping Finn will come home just to cuss at me for sitting on his car. My phone buzzes against the gravel on the ground where Candy Pickens sits. She scoots it up and screens the text. I can't be trusted to answer anything right now, not without burning a whole host of bridges. It's Beale, she reports. She's finally done with church and wants to know if she should come over. I'm tempted to say yes, but I shake my head. Other than Candy, Abigail Beale is my closest friend. She is nothing if not calm and collected, and if I need anything at the moment, it's to stay calm. But having her here won't make me feel any better. She only sits as powerlessly as I've been doing all day. The front door opens. Voices spill into the yard. Candy takes my cue, and we keep quiet to avoid being noticed. Are you sure you don't want to press charges? He's 18 now, not a boy anymore. And there isn't a soul in Styx who would think poorly of you for it, Gaddy. I recognize Sheriff Feltzer's lazy voice. He'd been inside with Mama and my stepdad, Deputy Daryl Gatewood, for the better part of the afternoon. No charges, my stepdad says. It was an accident, plain and simple. Maybe so, but he could have really hurt Sterling, and I don't much like the idea of letting someone get away with hitting one of my deputies. Sets a bad precedent, and a particularly bad one, if you know what I mean. I hope you'll reconsider. I'd like to walk right around the corner and tell him to do his job and go find Finn instead of looking for excuses to arrest him. But Daryl gets there first. Nothing to reconsider. That boy's had enough trouble in his life. It's not for me to add to it. He pauses. I strain to hear his next words. He might be in danger, you know. The sheriff has turned to pause. Then he says, I can't send any of our men to the swamp. You know it, Gaddy. I'm sorry. Let's wait and hope for the best. Daryl's muffled response is followed by the front door closing hard. Sheriff Felder comes into view, halting his slow stride to tip his Stetson. Sunlight flashes over the star pinned to the brim, and he drawls, "Girls," before pouring into his cruiser like molasses. Hope for the best is his way of saying he won't be looking for Finn, but he might feel bad about it. It's the same approach he uses for hurricanes. Anything he feels powerless against, or, in the case of my brother, anyone who's more trouble than they're worth. But Sheriff Felder doesn't know Phineas like I do. Maybe he'd feel differently if he'd known Finn as a 10-year-old twig of a boy willing to put himself in danger to keep me safe. Maybe he'd care if he'd seen Finn standing bare-chested, shaking brave in front of a man big enough to snap him like kindling. Maybe if he had, he wouldn't be ready to give up so easily. Or maybe he'd go on turning his eyes away from the swamp no matter what. "I'm sorry, Soyser," Candy says from the ground, her hands pressed to either side of the volleyball. She's more gentle than usual with the syllables of my last name. Soyser. The name Mama was born with, and the name Phineas and I took after Dad left. Sorry for what? I'm aware that being snappish isn't kind, but I lost kindness hours ago. Even if they cared, they'd never have looked in the swamp. This entire town would rather believe we're better off without him. That it was only a matter of time before violent Phineas Soyser crossed a line. When the story gets out, they'll care that Finn and I were fighting, and that Finn got so mad he nailed the carport by my head. They'll care that when Daryl grabbed Finn's shoulder, Finn spun around and punched him in the face. They'll care that Finn did what every man, woman, and child in the sticks knows not to do, and he crossed the split rail fence into the swamp. Then they'll shake their heads and cluck their tongues like it's such a shame, and if they're generous, they'll hope for the best. I peer over my shoulder at the far edge of my yard, where pine trees dust everything in shadow. Their branches bend down in a way they shouldn't, like greedy claws. We all know better than to cross that fence. But the only time Finn gets dumb is when he's angry, and he hasn't come back. They know what happened, Candy, I say. The swamp ate my brother. Don't be dramatic or anything, she says flatly. From beneath the pines, the air somehow winks both dark and bright. On our bit of the fence, beads and Christmas lights glitter against the old gray planks, a tradition started by my mama's daddy, Grandpa Soyser, to remind the swamp that there was nothing for it beyond its edges. Mama adds more Mardi Gras beads every year, clearing the oldest and dullest ones to make room for new strings of black and red top hats, purple and green fleur-de-lis, peppers, gator heads, and whatever else was tossed during the parades. And now, behind the familiar sight, something shines in the dark. Sweat slides down my spine, and I rub my eyes to clear them. When I open them, the air shimmers again. It's too early yet for fireflies, but the lights I see are unmistakable. They dance above the fence, 100 glowing eyes. Do you see that? I ask. What is that? Candy's face is impassive. You'll have to be more specific. I hop off the Chevrolet, my skin ripping from the hot chrome, and stalk to where the unremarkable split rail fence is ghostly pale against the dark swamp. It's as easy to climb over it as it is to scoot beneath. But no one does, and for some reason the swamp stays firmly on the other side. A few brave plants may reach across the line, but by and large, the swamp keeps as much distance from us as we do it. I stop just shy of the fence. It's at least 10 degrees cooler here, but that's not what makes my skin prickle. There, wrapping around every other tree trunk and dripping from the underside of broad leafy plants are lights as bold as fireflies. They swirl in and around the foliage, hover in the air, and thread through the tangle of Spanish moss. A chill races down my arms. I know you have him, I whisper. The lights wink. What are you on about? Candy calls from behind, running to catch up. What do you see in there? When I rest my hands on the fence, little lighted fronds reach for me. They brush over my hands like butterfly wings, and I snap them away. Nothing but swamp, she says, climbing boldly onto the bottom rung. No sign of him. Nothing strange? No little lights? This time she doesn't even look. All of our lives, she's told frightening swamp stories at sleepovers and on camping trips. She'd grin a cat-like grin when someone screeched or woke from a nightmare. But now her frown is for me alone. This is what happens when you starve your brain, Soyser. You get stupid. Well, I see something. What do you call lights that are always leading people into the swamp? The ones from the Clary stories. If anyone knows the finer details of the Clary tales, it's Candy. She steps off the fence. Sweat has pulled her straight, blonde hair flat against her forehead, and the bridge of her nose is beginning to flush pink. We've been outside for too long. But there wasn't an ounce of me that wanted to sit and listen to anything the sheriff had to say. You mean the creeping lights that people claim to see when they're drunk? That strand men and children deep in the swamp? The wasting shine, or just shine, she says confidently, and they're easy to explain away with our good friend science. That's it. That's what I see right now. Long, creeping lights like vines, not at all like science. I'm not usually quick to dismiss science, but this is different. The shine beckons and blinks and beckons and blinks and turns the whole swamp into a living thing. I know I shouldn't say more, but worry makes me reckless. I ask, what if there really is something different, dangerous about our swamp? That's called superstition or crazy, and that's no one's friend. The screen door squeals. Mama pushes her head through enough to be visible. Her dark curls are as limp as her voice when she calls, "Time to wash up, Sterling. Dinner in 10. And then she's gone. I don't think she even saw us standing there. That's my cue. Candy squeezes my hand, pulling me halfway to the house. Want me to see if I can weasel out of the Pickens weekly drama and stay for dinner? Selfishly, I do. But it'll be miserable inside our house, with or without her. I shake my head. Thanks, though. She nudges the heavy silver bracelet on my wrist and smiles. It's as much encouragement as she can muster. She retrieves her bike and pedals down the drive, leaving me alone in the middle of the yard. I twist the bracelet, letting the silver push into my bones. Finn gave it to me early this morning before everything went wrong. This morning. He hadn't even been gone a full day. It feels impossible. He'd been proud as a robin when he opened the box. I found it in the attic, with Grandpa's old things, he said, grinning. There was a reason Mama tucked it away when Grandpa died. It's horrid. A thick band of tarnished silver with a small gap where the wrist could squeeze through, embellished with a gaudy bloom of curling flowers. I frowned at Finn's grin. You don't say. Sass. he said with amusement. No one can dismiss my frowns like Phineas, and I felt the beginnings of a wretched smile respond to his teasing. I picture his dark hair, charting an impossibly choppy course down his head, and it took more than one hair product to change his curls into the mess he preferred. The long line of his nose, the sharp angles of his jaw, the 3 freckles that trip down the left side of his neck. I know my brother better than anybody. Let him go, I whisper, looking into the swamp. I feel the flood of sunset against my back, but my eyes stick to the dark place where Finn vanished. I should have gone after him. I shouldn't have let him carry that rage away. But there was a look in his eyes that I recognized, and it nailed my feet to the ground. Daryl told Mama that Finn only needed to blow off some steam. He'd come home before we knew it. Neither of them had been willing to voice the grim thought plaguing us all. The swamp always demands a price for trespassers. And he hadn't come home. Not in an hour, not in 8. Now, finally, my eyes burn and panic balloons in my throat of all the stories we keep in sticks about dangers of the swamp. There's not one in which someone who went inside returns unchanged. If they escape at all, it's with half a brain or madness in tow. Of course, those are just stories, tales to tell kids to scare one another, but they wouldn't be so frightening if our parents weren't so guarded. I'm certain that right now something awful is happening to my brother, and there's not a single thing that I can do to help him. Long after Candy was gone, I kept staring into the tangle. The shine grows brighter as the light of the day fades. Then, somewhere deep inside, I see movement. I squint, clench my fists, and wait. I want it to be Finn so very badly. Surfacing through the dust in flashes of white and green, a figure coalesces. I try not to breathe, not to move, or do anything that might draw attention and make the swamp stop this person from emerging. Its steps are slow. Mockingbirds shout their litany of songs as the setting sun. I smell something soft and sweet on the air. It gets closer. I see long hair and dark green sundress. I feel an icy pain in my chest. A girl. A girl, not my brother, is walking out of the swamp. Hello? I call, disappointment heavy in my throat. She pauses briefly but doesn't answer before continuing her slow progress towards me. Hey! A dozen swamp stories flashed in my mind. Is this even a girl? Unnerved, I stepped closer to the house, putting distance between us. Can you speak? I said hello. But again, she doesn't answer. Her hand extends slowly and she hesitates before finding the fence. Dark hair hangs on her face, wild with curls, and lovely in a way mine will never be. She climbs with something less than grace, fumbles with her dress, and nearly falls to the ground in my yard. She catches herself in a crouch, halfway to her knees. The clumsiness does nothing to relieve me. All at once, the shining vines reach toward the girl, grasping for her as if they never meant to let her go, but she's beyond their reach. She rocks, finding her balance. She tests the ground with her hands and feet before pushing up again. Then, her eyes lock on to mine, and she heads straight for me. I can't think of a single good reason for a strange girl to stumble out of the swamp. But to stumble out of this swamp? My mouth opens to shout, or scream, or make demands when Mama's voice comes from behind. Girls, what are you waiting for? Come wash up for dinner. When I turn, she's standing with the screen door pushed wide open and a steaming spoon in her hand. No hint of wariness about her. She watches me expectantly before shifting her gaze to the strange girl. What are you waiting for? She asks again. Her irritation is split evenly between me and the girl I've never seen before in my life. What? Sterling! Her mama points her spoon in warning. Don't start tonight. You and your sister put that cotton from your ears, and for Pete's sake, come in for dinner. My what? I ask, but she's already gone. The screen door slams 3 times behind her. There's a hollow feeling in my gut as I turn to the strange girl. Her hands folded demurely as her face is pale and radiant in the light escaping the kitchen windows. She wears a simple and quiet smile. Behind her, the swamp is flat, black against the dusted blue sky. In comparison, she's all watercolor and light. She doesn't look real, and I think it's because she's not. But she steps forward, still smiling, and says my name. Sterling. And then, let's not keep Mama waiting. And without another word, she walks past me, up 3 brick steps to the screen door, straight into my house. And that was the first chapter of Beware the Wild by Natalie C. Parker. And if you liked that, then you can come to the library and check it out, or put it on hold and come pick it up. Thank you so much.